The transport ship descended through the purple clouds of Draven Minor. Jake pressed his face against the viewing port, watching the landscape emerge below. The planet was beautiful, with vast forests of blue-green vegetation and silver rivers that caught the light. It looked peaceful, not like a place with a predator problem. Storm, Shadow, and Spark were secured in a special compartment behind him. He could hear them moving around, restless from the journey. They had never been on a spacecraft before, and the experience had made them anxious. But they trusted Jake, and that trust had kept them calm enough. Professor Velthar sat across from him, reviewing data on her tablet. The Draven settlement is located near the forest edge. The Velcro attacks have been increasing over the past 6 months. 3 injuries so far, thankfully no deaths. But the Dravens are frightened. Some are talking about abandoning the colony. Have they tried studying the Velcro's territory? Jake asked. Maybe the settlement is built on their hunting grounds or breeding area. They tried but could not get close enough. The Velcro are extremely aggressive toward the Dravens specifically. With other species who have visited, the Velcro are more cautious but not actively hostile. Velthar looked up from her tablet. That is one of the mysteries. Why target the Dravens? The ship landed on a cleared pad near the settlement. Coordinator Zeth was waiting to greet them, along with a small group of Draven scientists. They all looked tired and stressed. Thank you for coming, Zeth said, shaking Jake's hand in the human custom he had learned. We are desperate for answers. Just 2 days ago, a Velcro pack came within 10 meters of the settlement perimeter. We managed to drive them off with sonic deterrence, but they are getting bolder. Jake released the cubs from their compartment. They bounded out, immediately alert and scanning their new environment. The Draven scientists backed away nervously, but Zeth held his ground, though Jake noticed his hands trembling slightly. They are magnificent, Zeth said quietly, watching Storm pace around the landing pad. And terrifying. Are we certain they are safe? They are safe with me nearby, Jake assured him. They are protective of people I consider friends, so as long as you are friendly to me, they will not harm you. They settled into the research facility the Dravens had prepared. It was located at the settlement's edge with observation equipment pointed toward the forest. Jake was given his own quarters, with an adjacent area for the cubs. Professor Velthar took the room next door. That evening, Jake reviewed all the data the Dravens had collected on the Velcro. Videos, tracking data, behavioral observations. He watched footage of the attacks, studying how the Velcro moved, how they approached the settlement. They are not hunting, he said aloud, though only the cubs were there to hear him. Storm lifted her head from where she lay on his bed. Look at their body language. They are not stalking prey. They are driving something away. He watched more footage and the pattern became clearer. The Velcro were not trying to enter the settlement. They were trying to push the Dravens back to make them leave. They are defending something, Jake realized. But what? The next morning, he proposed an expedition into Velcro territory. Coordinator Zeth was reluctant. It is too dangerous. We have tried before and the Velcro attacked immediately. Let me try, Jake said. With the cubs. Other predators respond differently when they are with me. Maybe the Velcro will too. After much discussion and with extensive safety precautions in place, they agreed. Jake would go into the forest with Storm, Shadow, and Spark, accompanied by Professor Velthar and 2 Draven scientists operating remote drones. They would all wear emergency beacon devices that could trigger instant extraction if needed. They entered the forest early the next morning. The blue-green vegetation was dense, blocking much of the sunlight. Strange calls echoed through the trees, sounds Jake did not recognize. The cubs stayed close to him, alert but not frightened. About an hour into their trek, Storm stopped suddenly. Her crystalline spines flared bright and she made a low warning sound. Shadow and Spark immediately flanked Jake protectively. Something is near, Jake said quietly. Through the trees ahead, he saw movement. A Velcro stepped into view, then another, then 3 more. They were exactly as the hollows had shown, armor-plated bodies with powerful jaws. But seeing them in person, Jake noticed something the videos had not captured. The lead Velcro was limping. Another had scarring across its face. A third was thin, too thin for a healthy predator. They are hurt, Jake said, and hungry. The Velcro spotted the group and immediately moved into aggressive postures, growling and showing teeth. But they did not charge. They held their position, blocking the path forward. Storm responded with her own display, rising to her full height and spreading her legs to look larger. Her spines blazed with light. Shadow and Spark joined her, creating a wall of predator between Jake and the Velcro. For a tense moment, the two groups faced each other. Then something unexpected happened. The lead Velcro tilted its head, studying the Kavresh cubs. Its aggressive posture relaxed slightly. It made a sound, something between a growl and a whine. "It is confused," Professor Velthar whispered. "The cubs are larger predators, but they are protecting you instead of claiming territory. The Velcro does not know how to interpret this." Jake had an idea. It was risky, possibly foolish, but his instincts told him to try. He stepped out from behind the cubs. "Jake, no," Velthar said urgently. But Jake moved slowly, carefully, keeping his body language non-threatening. The cubs tensed but did not stop him. They trusted his judgment. He stopped a few meters from the Velcro pack. They watched him with what seemed like uncertainty. Up close, Jake could see more clearly how poorly they looked. These were not healthy predators. These were desperate ones. "You are starving," Jake said softly, not caring that they could not understand his words. His tone was what mattered. "Something has happened to your food supply, and you think the settlement is responsible?" The lead Velcro took a hesitant step forward, sniffing. Jake remained still. The Velcro circled him slowly, assessing. Then it did something that made the Draven scientist gasp over the communication link. It turned and walked away, back toward the deeper forest, but it paused after a few steps and looked back, clearly wanting Jake to follow. "It is inviting you," Velthar said, amazement in her voice. "It wants to show you something," Jake signaled to the cubs. "Come on. Stay close but do not threaten." They followed the Velcro pack deeper into the forest. After 20 minutes, they reached a clearing. What Jake saw there made him angry. The clearing was full of traps. Not Draven traps, but something older, possibly from before the settlement was established. Dozens of automated snares and cage traps, many with the remains of Velcro prey species inside. The traps had been left active, indiscriminately catching and killing wildlife. "This is why they are starving," Jake said. "Their food source has been decimated by these traps, and they think the Dravens are responsible because the traps are near the settlement." Professor Velthar scanned the area. "These traps are old, possibly left by a previous expedition or survey team, but they use power sources that have kept them active all this time." The Velcro pack watched as Jake examined the traps. The lead Velcro approached the nearest cage, pawing at it, then looked at Jake as if asking for help. "We need to disable all of these," Jake said, "and we need to help restore the Velcro's food supply." Over the next 2 days, Jake coordinated a massive cleanup operation. The Draven scientists, understanding now that they were not the real problem, worked to disable every trap in the Velcro territory. They found hundreds of them, spread across several square kilometers. Jake spent time with the Velcro pack, with Storm, Shadow, and Spark acting as intermediaries. The Velcro were wary but no longer aggressive. They seemed to understand that these newcomers were trying to help. The Dravens also brought in food supplies for the Velcro packs until the natural prey populations could recover. It was not a perfect solution, but it was a start. On the final day before Jake was scheduled to return to the academy, the lead Velcro approached the settlement perimeter. The Dravens watched nervously from behind their barriers, but the Velcro simply stood there for a moment, looking at the settlement, then at Jake, who stood outside with the cubs. Then it dipped its head in a gesture that seemed almost like respect, and turned back toward the forest. "I believe that was a thank you," Professor Velthar said. Coordinator Zeth was shaking his head in wonder. "We spent months trying to drive them away or understand them through data. It took a human and 3 predators from another world to simply ask what was wrong. The journey back to the academy was long, but Jake felt satisfied in a way he never had before. He had done something meaningful. He had helped both the Dravens and the Velcro find understanding. News of the success spread even faster than the original story about the cubs. Jake returned to find himself even more in demand. Requests came from across the galaxy for human consultants on predator-related issues. But more importantly, attitudes were changing. Species that had feared predators for their entire evolutionary history were starting to see them differently. Not as monsters to be avoided or destroyed, but as parts of complex ecosystems that deserved understanding. The Preservation Council chamber was built to hold hundreds of different alien species. It had different air types, different gravity zones, and special areas for beings who needed specific environments. It was huge and impressive. Today, it was packed with more people than anyone had ever seen. Word about the human with Karish cubs had spread across the station overnight. What should have been a simple testimony about illegal breeding had become the biggest event the council had seen in years. Scientists, politicians, traders, and curious aliens filled every space. They all wanted to see if the rumors were true. Council Chair Mordrin was massive. He had 4 arms and looked strong enough to break metal. He hit a large gong to start the meeting. This council recognizes Claire Dawson. She represents the Independent Xenobiology Collective. Ms. Dawson was called here to give evidence about the illegal Karish breeding facility found on Outpost Gemini 7. However, we must first talk about the creatures she brought with her. Claire stood on the central platform. Her hand rested on the head of the largest cub beside her. The other 2 cubs lay at her feet. They were alert but relaxed. "I am happy to answer any questions," Claire said. Her voice carried clearly through the chamber. "How long have you been with these Karish cubs?" asked Counselor Terrain. She was made of crystal that changed colors based on her emotions. Right now she was showing curious blue. 4 months. I found them in the breeding facility. They were kept in cages that were too small for them to even turn around. They were thin and scared. They had been taken from their mother when they were only 2 weeks old. That was way too early, and you bonded with them. Terrain's color changed to doubtful orange. I earned their trust, Claire corrected. Bonding sounds like I own them or control them. I do not own these cubs. I do not control them. We have a relationship based on respect and understanding. Dr. Kelvin stood up from where he sat with other scientists. "Chair Mordrin, may I speak?" "I have looked at Ms. Dawson's records. She has good credentials for a human, but she has no training in Karish behavioral psychology. The best experts in our field have spent decades trying to do what she claims she did in just 4 months. I think we need to do brain scans on both the human and the cubs. There might be some unknown chemical interaction, or maybe a parasite is controlling them." Sounds of discussion filled the chamber. Claire's face did not change, but the largest cub stood up. His ears went flat. She touched his shoulder and he relaxed right away. "I will let you do any scans you want," Claire said, "but I can save you time. There is no parasite. There are no chemicals. There is no brain control. What you are seeing is simple behavioral training combined with real emotional connection." "Karish do not form emotional connections," said Counselor Braxis. He was reptilian and believed strongly in following established science. "They do not have the brain chemistry for bonding that other species have." Claire smiled a little. "That is what your research says, yes. Research done mostly by keeping Karish in captivity, in bad environments, often alone or forced to be with other Karish when they naturally avoid each other. Tell me, Counselor, if I kept you in a bare metal cage for years and stressed you constantly and then said you could not form relationships, would that be accurate information about your species?" The chamber went silent. Braxis's scales turned deep purple. "Are you suggesting," Mordrin said slowly, "that 300 years of scientific research on one of the galaxy's most studied predators is wrong?" "I am suggesting that the research methods were wrong from the start," Claire replied. "When you assume a species is a monster, you create an environment that produces monster behavior. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy." She gestured at the cubs. "These 3 were called too damaged to study, too aggressive to handle. The facility planned to kill them. I asked if I could try something different. I gave them space. I gave them toys and interesting things to do. I gave them choices. And most importantly, I gave them patience and respect. This is anthropomorphization," Dr. Kelvin protested. "You are putting human emotions onto an alien species." "Am I?" Claire knelt down beside the smallest cub. The little one had been sleeping. "Hey, little one, are you comfortable here? Or do you want to go back to the holding area?" The cub opened her eyes. She looked around the chamber at all the staring faces. She made a soft chirping sound. Then she stood up, walked a few steps away from Claire, and lay back down. This time she positioned herself between Claire and the audience. "She chose to stay," Claire said, "and she put herself in a protective position because she can sense that I am in a stressful situation. That is not me projecting human emotions. That is me observing actual behavior." Mordran leaned forward. All 4 of his hands gripped his desk. "Ms. Dawson, if what you say is true, the implications are enormous. Karish are classified as a restricted species. Contact is limited to controlled research facilities. There are entire planets that are off limits because of Karish populations." "I know," Claire said quietly. And that is why I am here. The breeding facility on Gemini 7 was not just illegal because of the bad conditions. It was illegal because they were trying to turn Karesh into weapons. They wanted to create biological soldiers that could be controlled through pain and hunger. They failed because you cannot control a Karesh through fear any more than you can control a human that way. But the attempt showed something important. When treated properly, Karesh are very intelligent, emotionally complex, and capable of cooperation. She stood up. Her voice grew stronger. I have 4 months of documented behavioral data. I have video evidence of how I built trust with them step by step. I have brain scans showing that these cubs develop the same bonding brain patterns seen in other social predators when they are with me. And I have testimony from 5 other researchers who worked with me on the rehabilitation project. They all agree with my findings. Even if we accept your findings, Terrain said, her colors swirling with uncertainty. What are you proposing? That we reclassify the Karesh? Change 300 years of protective protocols? I am proposing that we start over, Claire said. That we admit we got it wrong and begin a real effort to understand the Karesh on their terms, not ours. These cubs deserve better than to be treated as monsters or weapons. They deserve a chance to be what they actually are. Intelligent, feeling beings with their own rich inner lives. The largest cub stood and walked to the edge of the platform. He looked out at the assembled crowd. Several delegates flinched back. But the cub just sat down, tilted his head, and made a questioning chirp. He wants to know why everyone is afraid, Claire translated. He can sense the fear in the room and it confuses him. In his experience, beings who are not threatening do not need to be feared. Dr. Kelvin shook his head. This is absurd. You are asking us to believe that this creature can analyze the emotional state of hundreds of different species at the same time? Not asking, Claire said. Demonstrating. She walked to the edge of the platform. Anyone here willing to approach? No pressure. But if you want to see for yourself, I promise they will not hurt you. The chamber erupted in nervous conversation. Finally, a small figure came forward from the crowd. It was a young alien made of crystal like terrain. Their body showed colors of curiosity mixed with fear, shifting between blue and yellow. I would like to try, they said in a high, clear voice. If the human speaks truth, we should know. Claire nodded encouragingly. Come on up. Move slowly and let them come to you if they want to. Do not reach out first. The young crystal alien climbed onto the platform. All 3 cubs stood up and watched. The smallest one took a step forward, then another. She approached the crystal being and sniffed carefully. Her whiskers twitched. The chamber held its breath. Then the cub chirped and gently bumped her head against the crystal alien's leg. She returned to Claire's side. The young alien's colors exploded into brilliant, joyful gold. She is warm, and her fur is soft, and I am not dead. Despite the tension, laughter rippled through the chamber. Even Chair Mordran's stern face softened a little. Perhaps, he said, we need to re-examine our assumptions. More aliens came forward. One by one, they approached the platform. Each time, the cubs were gentle and curious. They sniffed the visitors. They made soft sounds. They showed no aggression at all. With each peaceful interaction, the mood in the chamber changed. Fear was slowly being replaced by wonder. Dr. Kelvin watched it all with a troubled expression. Finally, he stood again. I request a recess. The council needs time to review this evidence properly. Mordran nodded. Agreed. We will reconvene in 3 hours. As the chamber emptied, Claire sat on the platform with the 3 cubs gathered around her. She felt exhausted but hopeful. The first big step had been taken. Now came the hard part. Convincing people to change centuries of belief was never easy. But she had the truth on her side, and she had 3 living examples of that truth pressed against her, purring softly. The cubs trusted her. That trust had brought them this far. Maybe it could change the galaxy. The hearing had stopped for 3 hours while the council talked privately. Claire sat in a waiting room with the cubs sleeping around her feet. She looked at her tablet and reviewed her data. She knew the real fight was just starting. The opposition would not come from scientific debate. It would come from people who made money and built careers on keeping Karesh classified as uncontrollable monsters. The door chimed. Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison entered. He was human and wore a military uniform. He worked in the Xenological Threat Assessment Division of the Galactic Defense Force. He'd been sitting in the observer section during her testimony. His face had been hard to read the whole time. "Ms. Dawson," he said. His voice was neutral. "Mind if I sit?" Claire pointed at a chair. "I assume you are here to tell me why I am wrong?" Jake sat down. His eyes briefly looked at the cubs. "Actually, I am here to tell you that you are right. And that is going to be a problem." Claire put down her tablet. "Explain." "The GDF has 6 facilities dedicated to Karash research," Jake said. "We have spent 40 years and billions of credits trying to develop ways to fight potential Karash aggression. We have trained elite units specifically for Karash encounters. We have created weapons, tactics, and entire strategic plans based on the assumption that Karash are unreasonable, unmanageable threats, and if I am right, all of that becomes useless," Claire finished. "Worse than useless. It becomes evidence of massive institutional failure." Jake leaned forward with his hands clasped. "I have read your preliminary reports. I watched the footage from Gemini 7. You know what kept me up last night? Thinking about the hundreds of Karash we have held in military research facilities. Thinking about the methods we used. The stress positions. The isolation cells. If they are as intelligent and emotional as you say, we have not been conducting research. We have been torturing them." Claire's expression softened slightly. "You believe me. I believe the evidence. And I believe that Earth did not become a strong member of the galactic community by ignoring uncomfortable truths." He pulled out his own tablet. "I have been going through classified files. There have been 7 incidents in the past 20 years where Karash in captivity showed behaviors that did not fit the established threat model. Each time, the incidents were explained away as errors or anomalies. But if I look at them through your theory..." He turned the tablet to show her a video. A Karash adult in a military facility was responding to music played by a human researcher. The creature had stopped pacing its cell and was sitting with its head tilted listening. The timestamp showed the observation lasted for 47 minutes. "That researcher was punished for unprofessional conduct," Jake said. "Playing music was deemed a security risk, a distraction from proper protocols. But look at the Karash's body language. That is not an animal responding to random noise. That is a being experiencing beauty." Before Claire could respond, the door opened again. This visitor was less friendly. Director Helen Shaw of the Galactic Exotic Wildlife Trading Consortium entered with 2 lawyers following her. Her expensive suit and cold expression showed she was someone used to getting her way. "Ms. Dawson," she said without greeting. "I am here to discuss your reckless testimony this morning." Claire stood slowly. The cubs sensed the shift in atmosphere and rose with her. They positioned themselves in a loose triangle around her. "Director Shaw, I know about your organization's work. You run 17 breeding facilities across 9 systems, all specializing in dangerous species, Karash being your main product. We provide a valuable service," Shaw said sharply. "We maintain population numbers for endangered predators and supply controlled specimens to research facilities. Your little show this morning threatens a carefully balanced system." "Your facilities are where I found these cubs," Claire said. Her voice grew harder. "Kept in cages, traumatized, scheduled for destruction because they did not meet your aggression quotas. Those cubs were defective," Shaw countered. "They showed insufficient survival instincts. In the wild, they would have died. We were following ethical protocols by removing unsuitable specimens." Jake stood up. "Director Shaw, I think you should leave." Shaw ignored him. She focused on Claire. "You do not understand what you are doing. The Karash are dangerous. The current system keeps people safe. If you convince the Council to reclassify them, you will be responsible for every death that occurs when naive colonists decide these creatures make good pets." "I am not advocating for pets," Claire said. "I am advocating for proper understanding and respect. There is a difference between a wild Karash defending its territory and the traumatized, caged creatures you produce for profit. My organization employs thousands of people across the galaxy. We contribute to scientific knowledge. We keep dangerous populations under control. You would destroy all of that based on 4 months with 3 damaged cubs?" The largest cub growled. It was low and rumbling. Shaw and her lawyers took a step back without thinking. Claire placed a hand on the cub's shoulder and he quieted, though his eyes remained fixed on Shaw. "He does not like you," Claire said quietly. "Not because he is programmed to be aggressive, but because he can sense hostility and threat. He is responding appropriately to a genuinely dangerous situation. That creature should be in a containment unit." Shaw snapped. "This entire proceeding is a farce. Karash cannot be trusted. cannot be domesticated, cannot be integrated into civilized society. I will be filing a formal complaint with the Council and demanding immediate containment of your specimens. They are not specimens, Claire said. They are individuals. They have names. This is Copper. She indicated the largest cub. That is Silver, and the small one is Dawn. They are 4 months old. They like dried meat. They enjoy playing in water. They are afraid of loud noises because of the trauma they experienced in your facilities. They are people, Director Shaw, not products. Shaw's expression turned nasty. Anthropomorphic nonsense. You are projecting human sentiment onto alien predators. When one of those things kills someone, their blood will be on your hands. She turned sharply and left. Her lawyers scrambled to follow. Jake let out a long breath. Well, you made an enemy there. She was already an enemy, Claire said. Her entire business depends on Koresh being seen as uncontrollable monsters. If people realize they are intelligent, emotionally complex beings, the whole system collapses. Which means she is going to fight you with everything she has. Jake returned to his seat. Claire, I want to help you, but you need to understand the forces against you. It is not just the trading consortium. It is military contracts, research grants, political careers built on xenological threat assessment, entire academic departments whose fundamental theories are at stake. You are threatening powerful people's credibility and income. Claire sat down heavily. Copper immediately pressed against her leg, offering silent comfort. So what do I do? You keep presenting evidence. You stay calm. You document everything. Jake pulled up another file on his tablet. And you let me do what I can from inside the military. I am going to push for a review of our Koresh protocols. If I can get even a few high-ranking officers to question the current model, it might give the Council cover to act. Why are you helping me? Claire asked. Your career is on the line too. Jake smiled slightly. Because I joined the GDF to protect people, not to torture misunderstood aliens, and because my sister is a xenobiologist back on Earth. She works with rescued animals from illegal operations. When I sent her your preliminary data last night, do you know what she said? What? She said it reminded her of what happened with Earth wolves. How for centuries humans saw them as mindless killers, hunted them nearly to extinction, only to discover they were intelligent, social, and capable of living with humans when given the chance. She said we made that mistake on our own planet, and here we are making it again on a galactic scale. Claire felt something release in her chest. Thank you, Jake. Do not thank me yet. This is going to get worse before it gets better. He stood. The Council reconvenes in 2 hours. Be ready for more hostile questioning. And Claire, watch your back. Director Shaw does not seem like the type to accept defeat gracefully. After Jake left, Claire sat with the cubs in silence. Silver climbed into her lap, something she rarely did, and chirped softly. Dawn and Copper moved closer, their warm bulk pressing against her sides. Yeah, Claire whispered, scratching Silver's ears. I know, but we have come too far to stop now. Outside the window, Station Meridian glittered with thousands of lights. It was home to millions of beings from hundreds of worlds. Somewhere out there, on planets she had never seen, wild Koresh lived and hunted and raised their young. They had no idea that their entire future was being debated in a council chamber. She thought about Jake's sister, about wolves on Earth, about how many times intelligent species had looked at something they did not understand and chosen fear over curiosity. The cubs trusted her. That trust was not magic or brain control. It was earned moment by moment through patience and respect. If she could show the galaxy that, maybe things could change. Maybe. The council chamber was in chaos when it reconvened. During the break, someone had leaked footage of Claire's interaction with the young crystal alien to the station's public networks. Within hours, it had spread across 36 star systems. The image of a Koresh cub gently greeting a child had become the most shared piece of media in the sector. Public opinion was shifting fast, and that terrified the people in power. Chair Mordran struggled to restore order as delegates argued loudly. Observers shouted. Security personnel tried to manage the expanded crowd. Claire stood at the central platform with the 3 cubs sitting calmly beside her, despite all the noise. She had learned that they took emotional cues from her. If she stayed calm, they stayed calm. Order! Mordran's voice boomed through the chamber. We will have order, or I will clear this room. Slowly the noise died down. Mordran gestured at the assembly with all 4 arms. We have heard Ms. Dawson's testimony. We have seen the evidence of her interaction with the Karish cubs. Now we must hear from experts in the field. Dr. Kelvin, you requested time to present a counter-analysis? Dr. Kelvin stood. His body radiated confidence. Thank you, Chair. I have conducted a thorough review of Ms. Dawson's data. I must report significant concerns about methodology, interpretation, and potential problems with her conclusions. He activated a holographic display. First, the sample size. 3 cubs from a single rescue situation do not make a representative sample. These individuals may be outliers. They may even be brain damaged from their mistreatment. I have scans proving their brains are healthy. Claire interjected. Scans that show unusual development of certain brain regions, Kelvin countered, which could indicate abnormal growth patterns. Second, the duration of observation is insufficient. 4 months is barely enough to establish baseline behavior, much less prove a fundamental rewrite of our understanding of Karish psychology. He pulled up more data. Third and most concerning is the issue of human pheromones. Humans produce a complex array of chemical signals that have been shown to affect the behavior of other species. It is possible that Ms. Dawson is inadvertently dosing these cubs with biochemical agents that produce artificial bonding responses. I underwent full pheromone suppression therapy before beginning the rehabilitation project, Claire said. It is all in my medical records. Suppression therapy is not 100% effective, Kelvin argued. Even trace amounts of bonding hormones could influence behavior over time. What you interpret as genuine emotional connection might simply be chemical dependency. Sounds of agreement came from the scientific observer section. Claire felt her frustration rising, but kept her voice level. Dr. Kelvin, your objections all assume that my findings are unusual. What if they are not? What if the unusual thing is the way we have been studying Karish for 300 years? That is an extraordinary claim requiring extraordinary evidence, Kelvin said. And you have not provided it. Then let me provide it now. Claire pulled out her tablet. I would like to call a witness through remote connection, someone who has been studying Karish in their natural habitat for the past 15 years. Mordren's eyes narrowed. This witness was not on the approved list. I was not aware I needed approval to present relevant expert testimony, Claire said calmly. Dr. Lisa Grant is currently on the outer research station at Karish Prime. She is conducting the longest continuous observation study of wild Karish populations ever attempted. I believe her findings are directly relevant to this hearing. After a brief consultation with other council members, Mordren nodded. We will allow it. Establish the connection. A holographic display appeared above the central platform. It showed a middle-aged woman with sun-weathered skin and gray streaks in her brown hair. She sat in what looked like an observation station, surrounded by monitoring equipment. Behind her, through a window, dark shapes moved through alien jungle. Dr. Grant, Mordren said. Thank you for joining us on short notice. Lisa Grant smiled. Chair Mordren, I have been watching the proceedings remotely. Ms. Dawson's testimony has been the talk of every research station in the sector. Her eyes found Claire. It is about time someone said what needed to be said. You agree with Ms. Dawson's conclusions? Terrain asked. Her color shifted to surprised green. I do not just agree. I can prove them with independent evidence. Lisa gestured to something off-screen. For 15 years, I have been observing a population of approximately 40 adult Karish and their offspring. Unlike controlled facilities, I have watched them in their natural environment. I follow ethical observation rules that minimize interference. She pulled up her own data streams. What I have documented contradicts almost everything in the established literature. Karish are not solitary. They maintain loose social networks spanning territories of hundreds of square kilometers. They are not driven purely by aggression. They have complex communication systems involving sounds, chemical signals, and body language. And most relevant to this hearing, they are capable of forming cooperative relationships with other species. The chamber erupted again. Lisa waited for the noise to die down before continuing. 3 years ago, a young fennec, a small tree-dwelling species native to Karish Prime, fell from a tree near a Karish den. It had a broken wing and could not flee. I watched, expecting the Karish to eat it. Instead, the adult Karish sniffed the fennec, determined it was not a threat or viable prey, and left it alone. Over the next week, that same Karish brought the fennec food scraps and protected it from other predators. When the wing healed, the fennec left. But it returned periodically to the same area. I documented 17 interactions over 2 years between that Karesh and that Fennec. Interactions that can only be described as friendship. Dr. Kelvin stood abruptly. That is impossible. There is no evolutionary advantage to such behavior. Karesh are apex predators. So are Earth lions, Lisa shot back. Yet lion prides show altruism, adoption of orphans, and even documented cases of protecting other species. Why do we assume apex predators cannot have complex social emotions? Being an effective hunter and being emotionally intelligent are not mutually exclusive. She pulled up video footage. I have hundreds of hours of recordings showing Karesh behavior that does not fit the threat model. I have documented play behavior between adults, teaching interactions between parents and cubs that involve patience and repetition, and even what appears to be mourning behavior when a group member dies. These are not mindless killing machines. They are sophisticated beings with rich inner lives. Then why, Counselor Braxis demanded, have all controlled studies shown aggressive, unmanageable behavior? Because you are torturing them, Lisa said bluntly. Imagine taking a human, stripping them of all social contact, confining them to a bare room, subjecting them to constant stress and invasive procedures, then being surprised when they become violent and withdrawn. That is not studying human nature. That is studying human trauma responses. The same applies to Karesh. She leaned forward. Her expression was intense. Ms. Dawson's work with those cubs is not an anomaly. It is a return to proper methodology. She treated them as intelligent beings deserving of respect and agency, and they responded exactly as my wild subjects would respond to a non-threatening presence, with curiosity, caution, and eventually trust. Claire felt a wave of relief. Having independent proof from someone with Lisa's credentials changed everything. Jake Morrison stood from the military observer section. Dr. Grant, I have a question. You mentioned cooperative relationships with other species. Have you ever observed a Karesh protecting another being without expectation of benefit? Yes, Lisa said immediately. Multiple times. Last year I witnessed an adult Karesh place itself between a group of young Fennecs and a predatory Skex. The Skex was too large for the Karesh to easily defeat. There was no tactical advantage to the intervention. The Karesh fought anyway. It drove off the Skex and sustained injuries doing so. After the incident, the Fennec colony began leaving food offerings near the Karesh's den. Reciprocal altruism, the foundation of all complex social systems. That suggests, Jake said slowly, that Karesh have a moral framework, a concept of protecting the vulnerable. That is my conclusion, Lisa agreed. I believe Karesh possess what we might call empathy. Not identical to human empathy, but similar. They can recognize distress in other beings and are motivated to help under certain circumstances. The implications rippled through the chamber. If Karesh had empathy, they had moral agency. If they had moral agency, treating them as animals was ethically wrong. Director Shaw stood up from where she sat with her legal team. This is all speculation and anthropomorphic projection. You are seeing what you want to see. I am seeing what is there, Lisa said calmly, and I have documented it rigorously. My research has been peer-reviewed and published in 3 major journals. The data is available to anyone who wants to examine it. Convenient that you are announcing this now, just when it supports Ms. Dawson's agenda. Shaw sneered. I announced it 2 years ago, Lisa replied, in the Journal of Xenobiological Studies. No one paid attention because it contradicted the established narrative, but the data has always been there for anyone willing to look. The council had talked for 3 days. During that time, Claire and the cubs stayed in their quarters under guard. Though the security personnel had slowly relaxed as it became clear the cubs were no threat. Several guards had even started bringing treats against the rules after watching the cubs play with a ball, Claire made from spare fabric. On the morning of the 4th day, Claire was called back to the chamber. The cubs sensed her nervousness and pressed close as they walked through the station corridors. News crews from a dozen star systems had gathered outside the council building. The decision about the Karesh had become a galactic event. Inside, the chamber was packed even more than before. Chair Mordran looked tired. His forearms moved with less energy than usual. The other council members showed similar signs of strain. Whatever debates had happened behind closed doors had not been easy. This council has reached a decision, Mordran announced without any greeting. But before I deliver it, I want to acknowledge that this proceeding has challenged 300 years of accepted scientific consensus and institutional practice. The testimony of Ms. Claire Dawson and Dr. Lisa Grant, combined with the observable evidence before us, has forced us to confront uncomfortable truths about our treatment of the Keresh species. He paused, looking directly at Claire. However, we cannot make sweeping changes based solely on 3 cubs and 1 long-term observation study. The implications are too vast, the potential consequences too severe. Claire's heart sank. She felt Copper lean more heavily against her leg, as if sensing her disappointment. Therefore, Mordrin continued, this council has decided on the following measures. First, all current Keresh breeding facilities will be subject to immediate independent inspection. Any facility found to be in violation of updated ethical standards will be shut down permanently. Director Shaw, your organization will be the first inspected. Shaw stood angrily. This is overreach. You have no authority to do this. We have every authority, Mordrin interrupted. Your license to operate was granted by this council and can be revoked by this council. Inspections begin tomorrow. Shaw stormed out. Her legal team scrambled after her. Mordrin waited until the doors closed before continuing. Second, we are commissioning a comprehensive 5-year study of Keresh behavior. It will be conducted by a team including both Dr. Grant and Ms. Dawson. This study will include both wild populations and cubs, raised in properly designed environments. The study will be fully funded and given unrestricted access to all previous Keresh research. Sounds of surprise rippled through the chamber. Claire felt a spark of hope. Third, and most significantly, we are provisionally reclassifying the Keresh from unmanageable predator to restricted social predator. This new classification acknowledges their intelligence and emotional complexity while maintaining necessary safety protocols. During the 5-year study period, controlled interaction programs will be established to better understand the conditions under which Keresh can safely coexist with other species. Counselor Terrain's colors shifted to approving blue. This is a reasonable compromise between caution and justice. Finally, Mordrin said, looking at the 3 cubs, Copper, Silver, and Dawn are hereby granted protected status as ambassadors of their species. They will remain in Ms. Dawson's care and will participate in the comprehensive study. Their welfare and development will be monitored, but they will not be subjected to invasive procedures or confined against their will. Claire felt tears in her eyes. It was not everything she had hoped for, but it was a start, a real start. Ms. Dawson, Mordrin said, you have given this council much to consider. You have challenged our assumptions and forced us to question our methods. That is never comfortable, but it is necessary. On behalf of the Preservation Council, I thank you for your courage and your compassion. The chamber erupted in a mix of applause and dissenting shouts. Jake Morrison was clapping enthusiastically from the military section. Dr. Kelvin sat with his head in his hands, looking defeated but thoughtful. As the session ended, people crowded around Claire. Some wanted to congratulate her. Others wanted to argue. Still others just wanted to see the cubs up close. Through it all, Copper, Silver, and Dawn remained calm. Their trust in Claire was evident in every movement. A week later, Claire stood in the observation area of what would become the new Keresh Research and Rehabilitation Center. The facility was still being built, but the basic structure was complete. Large habitats filled with interesting things replaced the bare metal cages of the old facilities. Natural lighting, climate control, space to run and play, and most importantly, respect for the inhabitants. Lisa Grant had come up from Keresh Prime to help design the center. She stood beside Claire now, watching as contractors installed a massive climbing structure in one of the main habitats. You did good, Lisa said. Better than I ever managed. I documented their intelligence, but you proved they could connect with other species. That is what changed minds. We both did what we could, Claire replied. And we have 5 years to prove it. 5 years to show that Keresh are not monsters, just misunderstood. What will you do after? Lisa asked. After the study is complete? Claire smiled. There are other species out there. Species classified as dangerous that might just be traumatized. I have been getting messages from conservation groups across the galaxy. Turns out a lot of unmanageable predators might benefit from a human approach. The human approach, Lisa mused. Patience, respect, and the stubborn refusal to accept that something is impossible just because everyone says so. Something like that. Behind them, the cubs were playing with Jake Morrison, who had requested a transfer to the new research center. He had been right that his career in traditional military work was effectively over, but he had found a new purpose in rehabilitation work. Right now he was playing what looked like a game of chase with Silver. She chirped with delight as she dodged his attempts to tag her. "He is good with them," Lisa observed. "Humans often are," Claire said. "We spent thousands of years learning to cooperate with Earth predators. Wolves became dogs because we figured out how to build relationships based on mutual benefit rather than dominance. Maybe that is what we bring to the galactic community. Not superior technology or military might, but the experience of learning to live alongside dangerous things instead of just trying to control them." A message alert sounded on Claire's tablet. She pulled it up and smiled. It was from the Council. They had completed the first round of facility inspections. 6 breeding operations had been shut down permanently. 200 Karesh cubs had been transferred to temporary rehabilitation centers while proper facilities were being built. 200 cubs who would now have a chance at a real life. "Come on," Claire said, heading toward the play area. "Let us see if we can teach Jake the proper technique for cub tag. He is going to wear himself out doing it wrong." As they walked across the observation deck, Claire thought about the journey that had brought her here. 4 months ago, she had been nobody, a freelance researcher with unusual ideas and no institutional backing. Now she was reshaping galactic understanding of one of the most feared species in known space, all because she had looked at 3 traumatized cubs and seen people instead of monsters. Down in the play area, Copper noticed her arrival and came running over. Dawn followed. They pressed against her legs, their warmth and weight familiar and comforting. Silver finished her game with Jake and joined them. The security officers who had met her on that first day at Station Meridian had asked why the cubs followed her. She had told them the truth then, and it was still true now. They did not follow her because she controlled them. They did not follow her because of chemicals or brain tricks or any scientific manipulation. They followed her because she had been the first person to treat them with kindness, to see them as individuals, to give them a choice, and they had chosen to stay. That choice, repeated every day, was the foundation of everything that had come after. It was the proof that connection could bridge even the widest gaps between species, that understanding could overcome fear, and that sometimes the most dangerous thing was not the predator in front of you, but the assumptions you carried in your own mind. Claire knelt down and wrapped her arms around all 3 cubs at once. They purred, that strange rumbling chirp that meant happiness. For a moment everything else faded away. The politics, the opposition, the massive weight of changing 300 years of thinking. It all seemed distant and manageable, because in this moment 3 young beings trusted her completely. And that was enough. "Ready to start changing the galaxy?" Lisa asked with a smile in her voice. Claire looked up at the half-finished research center, at the dozens of spaces that would soon house rescued Karesh. At the new beginning they were all building together. "We already have," she said. "The rest is just follow-through." Above them, through the clear dome of the observation deck, stars glittered in the darkness of space. Somewhere out there, on countless worlds, Karesh lived their lives unaware of the revolution happening in their name. Someday they might live in a galaxy that saw them for what they truly were. Thanks to 3 cubs, 1 stubborn human, and the simple revolutionary.